All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. Going to be breaking down the Sunday morning showdown slate, the London game here between the LA Rams and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I haven't done any of the videos for the London games, mostly due to content restrictions and timing that I can do based off of YouTube. So if you guys appreciate this video, do leave a like on the video, comment something as well, just showing that that does help out the algorithm a decent amount. But this is a game that I wanted to cover because I do think we are going to get some pretty darn good edges. It's kind of a straightforward slate due to some of the injuries that we're getting that is going to create some good value for us as well. So it's a slate that I think we can attack. So I wanted to give you guys a video for that. So first and foremost, I always like to start off with a quick game preview. So it is worth calling out, 44.5 total points. So nothing too crazy there. Point wise, point spread as well. 3-point spread in favor of the Rams. Now, the biggest issue that we have with this game, and the only tough part about predicting it could be that a lot of the top plays to me on the slate are the Rams because they get a good matchup against the Jaguars. But the Rams traveled pretty late to this game. And historically speaking, we have kind of seen, that lead to jet lag. Okay. And so if they don't show up, I think we'll know why. It'll be because of that. And it's just one of those variables that I wish we just didn't have. I wish they would have traveled earlier and we didn't have to worry about that at all. But maybe this game ends up being sloppy. Maybe the Rams do not show up. I don't expect that. They are used to traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast, and it's just a further extension off of that. So I believe they traveled to the West, from the West Coast to the East Coast, and then also went to the East Coast to London. And what I saw was that's like not that big of a time difference from that standpoint in terms of travel. Maybe that's the thought process, but historically speaking, that has been an annoyance. So let's go ahead and start off with the top Rams players. So we do know that Puka Nacua is going to be out in this game, right? And so with him being out, I do think Davante Adams is going to step up into the Puka Nacua role, which I don't literally mean his role. I actually think that's going to go to Jordan Whittington. But in terms of pass volume, if someone's going to see 12 plus targets in this game, it's most likely to be Davante Adams. One, he's already gained a high target share. He's already done that in a few games, but he's just going to get more of a focus. Okay, he saw 9 targets last week. We've seen him get 11 and 13 targets. He should have a pretty high floor. This is a game where I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up scoring a touchdown. The Jaguars have been a team that you can defeat in the air. And so if I had to choose like the player I want most in the captain spot, it's going to be Davante Adams. Now, that being said, Jordan Whittington, as I've been saying the whole year, is kind of the clear-cut handcuff to Puka Nacua. We saw this happen twice last year. Early on in the year, Puka Nacua was banged up. In week 2 last year, I thought it would be Jordan Whittington that was taking over for Puka Nacua. That did not happen. And then week 3 and 4, it was Jordan Whittington in the Puka Nacua role, and he looked good doing that. Last week, we saw him play 90% of the snaps, ended up with 4 targets, 3 receptions, 23 yards. They did not have to throw the football that much, and so it's encouraging to me that he was able to do that. Now, he has already been someone that has had a role this whole season, and he is someone that I do think will literally fill the Puka Nacua role. It's just whether or not Matthew Stafford will force feed the targets to Whittington. The thing with watching the film last week is Whittington was open a bunch as well. So if Stafford had wanted to choose to throw a little bit more aggressive passes, Whittington could have benefited from it, but the underneath routes were open a bunch last week. So someone like Tyler Higbee ended up getting a lot of targets and played well in that game. And what I mean by a lot of targets is playing time wise and just production wise, it was his best game. Now, the issue with Tyler Higbee is I don't think he's going to be as involved in this game for 2 reasons. One, Colby Parkinson is back in this game. I just think that muddies up the situation more at tight end for the Rams. And so that's a guessing game. And 2, Tutu Atwell is going to be back in this game as well. Now, if Jordan Whittington does not have a good game, it's going to be because Sean McVay saw something in the Jacksonville Jaguars defense that led him to want to get more of Tutu Atwell's skill set rather than Jordan Whittington's skill set. And so I do think we're mostly playing Davante Adams, and I do think we're mostly playing Jordan Whittington as well. But I do think we should almost set a rule when we're making our lineups here that if a lineup includes Tutu Atwell in the flex here, I want exactly 0 of Jordan Whittington also in the flex or captain. Because I think we can consider Jordan Whittington a captain. I think he's going to be a great play on the site. But we can only do that in let's say 80% of builds. So still 20% of builds, we will still get that. I think that's a good grouping to roll out. And I think that's a great option. Now, I also want to toss in some things as well. So When a lineup includes Matthew Stafford in the flex, I'm going to be pretty straightforward, guys. I want at least, well, exactly one. Let's rephrase this. So when a lineup includes Jordan Whittington in the captain, I don't know if we necessarily need to do that. I was going to say Matthew Stafford in the flex, right? I think Whittington could hold value himself without Matthew Stafford necessarily being in that lineup. Maybe it becomes more of a kicker-heavy slate. I think that could be a viable option on the slate. Let's just not do that just yet. But the point being, obviously going back to it, I do think there is a realm of possibility where it's either a Tutu Atwell game or a Jordan Whittington game. I'm going to bet on it being a Jordan Whittington game. I do think Kyren Williams has a good chance to have a great game in this game again. Again, with Puka Nacua being out, I do think we could see Kyren Williams actually get used in the passing game a little bit more. He's still seeing about 70% of the carries, guys, and touches. Now, if you take away the touchdown last week that he got, it's really not that good of a game, but he is someone that has had a high floor. If we're choosing between Kyren and Matthew Stafford, though, I do think we want to go with Matthew Stafford, especially given the build that we currently have going here. The Rams DST is somewhat in play. Trevor Lawrence, it has been very spotty. Both kickers are going to be in play in the slate. I've typically been trying to set a rule with the kickers that I want at least one of them in all my builds. Never in the captain spot, though. So like Cam Little and Cardi, we can put in the flex, and I want at least one of them in 55% of the builds, maybe a little bit higher for this one. And that's just because, it doesn't take much for them to get there. You kick a 50-yarder these days, or even 60-yarder these days, that's 5 points for you. You score an extra point, that's your hidden value there. And maybe we only set to one for the slate because we are getting a bunch of solid value as well in general for the Jaguars and Rams. But I did want to toss that out to you guys there as well. And so let's jump into the Jaguars here. So the Jaguars are going to still be without Brendan Strange, who has basically been their top pass catcher. The first game with him being out fully, we actually saw Brian Thomas Jr. kind of break out. So he ended up with 10 targets in that game, 8 receptions, and then a touchdown. I don't think that was a mistake. I think that is something that just had to happen with Brendan Strange being out. And so I do think Brian Thomas Jr. is probably the top play on the slate for the Jaguars. That being said, he is much more difficult to get to. I don't know if the difference between Trevor Lawrence to Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be all that significant. And I do want to be getting to both the quarterbacks in this slate. I also do really want to get to Travis Hunter, who ended up playing his most snaps of the year last year. And I thought he looked solid. He ended up getting a bunch of targets as well in that game, ended up getting 7 targets, only 28 air yards. Which you can look at that two ways. One, that means he should have a high floor, right? He ended up with 4 catches on 7 targets with 28 air yards, right? So high floor, maybe those air yards increase and becomes a little bit more valuable. But at his price tag, he's almost someone I cannot avoid, especially given the fact that I do think this could end up being a little bit more of a higher scoring game. And so I do think Trevor Lawrence, especially stacked with Travis Hunter, is one of my favorite spots on the slate. Now, from there, we also did see Hunter Long play a decent amount in the game last week, guys. He ended up getting 79% of the snaps, a 67% route share, which is strange because Johnny Mund ended up with 2 targets on only 29% route share. So, that seems like a little bit skewed there with Johnny Mund, where if you just give that to Hunter Long, you get maybe an additional target, maybe an additional reception. It becomes much more appealing. We do know that this has been a good spot for the tight end in this offense. And so the fact that Hunter Long is at 3K is just too cheap. And so if I'm trying to give you guys a hand build, I don't mind this build. I think this ends up being a solid build. I don't mind De'Ami Brown. I don't mind Parker Washington as values. I just don't think we need to go there. Parker Washington continues to look good, guys. 4 targets on 37% route share, and De'Ami Brown, really just not doing much. He did play a lot, but just not being all that productive. Still worth a look in GPPs. Like, he is too cheap as well. All right, so let's go ahead and just take a peek at the lineup builder and kind of show you guys what I'm thinking captain-wise. So I do think we want to get to Jordan Whittington at least 15% in this one. I do. I think there's a good chance he goes off. And then Devontae Adams, like 25%. I think those are the top 2 plays on the slate. We'll get to Matthew Stafford about 5%. I'm fine with that. Kyren Williams about 5% as well as the min. Okay, I'm not going to set the max on them, but I'm telling the data I want to get to those 2 a decent amount. I'm going to bump up Jordan Whittington a little bit more as well to tell the data I want to be on Jordan Whittington. I think he's going to end up having a very good game. Now, from there, who else do I want to be on for the Jaguars? Well, I do think Trevor Lawrence has a little bit more rushing upside. We haven't seen that all too much thus far this year. There's been a few games. Maybe he gets going in this game. There's always that element to his game. And so I do want to be on a little bit more than I do Matthew Stafford. We'll get to Brian Thomas Jr. a min of 5% as well. I didn't mention or Travis Etienne at all? I think he's fine. He's fine on the slate. You know, probably could get some receptions. Don't need to go crazy with that though. From there, Travis Hunter, I do like a decent amount. We'll get to him about 10% in this game as well. Again, mostly due to pricing. And then I am going to get to for the flex, I'm going to tell it that I do want Hunter Long in about 15% of my builds as well, just because I do think he's going to end up having a good game, and he's kind of the value I want to target. So I'm going to bump him up a little bit here. I'm going to bump him up to 6 for his fantasy score, so 2x there. And that is sort of by projected ownership as it currently sits. Is there anyone that I don't want to be on as much as we are getting? Well, I do want to cap the kickers at 50% each, but again, I do want to be on them a little bit. So we're going to bump up their min projection to 25% each. Again, I think it's going to end up being a good game for them. Jordan Whittington, let's get up to 35. I'm going to cap Tyler Higbee at about 15% projected ownership. I do not want to be overweight on him. I'm fine being even weight with him. Travis Hunter, we're going to bump up to 25%. Tutu Atwell, don't need to go crazy with. Johnny Mund, we're going to cap at 5. Ferguson, maybe has a good game. Don't need much of him. We're going to cap him at 5 as well. From there, there's other, okay plays, but they're mostly guessing games. We don't need to go crazy with those plays. So let's go ahead and force a QB stack with pass catcher. We're going to exclude any players that are projected at 0. Then let's go ahead and run this build. Well, max exposure, we'll drop that down to 65% here or so. So we ran it here, guys, and actually the top build, the first build is Tutu Atwell in the captain spot. Again, I don't necessarily love Tutu Atwell in the captain spot with Jordan Winton. That is something I could change. The top projected build is going to be Adams, Kyron, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Jordan Winton. Muntfield is someone that could get some work in this game, could get a catch. I don't mind him as the min price, punt like this. I don't hate that. I think that ends up working a little bit, but I also don't want to go crazy with that. An extreme chalk build would be Kyron, Adams, Stafford, Cardi, Whittington, and Tyler Higbee. Again, I don't necessarily like Tyler Higbee. I would like the second lineup a little bit more. Jordan Whittington, Adams, Kyron, Stafford, Hunter, and Cardi. I would like that a little bit more. That being said, let's take a peek at the ownerships that we're getting at the captain spot. And so we're getting our proper ownerships to Adams, Lawrence, Whittington. Did not get Travis Hunter in here. Okay, so that was something I did want to get. Again, if we're doing 150 lineups, that'd work a little bit more. Also, don't necessarily need Tutu Atwell in the captain spot. He could go off. I don't hate it, but I don't necessarily love it. And so the only thing I would change here is probably get to Travis Hunter a little bit more. And the only way I would be able to do that then is to raise his fantasy points here. We'll bump him up to 15. Again, this is a bet on those snaps still being there. It is a London game. He's someone that does like to show out as well. Maybe even bump him up to 16 here as well. And so that should ensure that he's getting in there. Again, if we're doing 150 lineups, that's going to naturally work already though. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Appreciate you being here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you guys would like access to the tools that you saw throughout this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to all the tools available on the website for a low monthly cost of $10 a month, guys. Gives you access to all the fantasy golf tools, all the prop tools, and all the NFL DFS tools, plus some bonus tools as well. Check that out, guys. Again, available for $10 a month. Appreciate you being here. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.